In a quiet farming town near the Rocky Mountains, there lived a young woman named Emily. Her life had never been easy. From the time she was a little girl, her family treated her like she was a burden. While her brothers were praised and trained to run the land, Emily was ignored, criticized, and blamed for everything that went wrong. If crops failed, they said it was her fault. If money was short, they said she was useless. Emily tried her best. She cooked, cleaned, carried water, and worked in the fields, but nothing was ever enough. Her hands were always sore, her heart always tired. She dreamed of a life where someone would look at her and see her worth, but that dream felt far away. One winter morning, when snow covered the ground and the wind howled through the old wooden house, her family made a cruel decision. They had heard about a lonely mountain man who lived deep in the hills. He had land, but no wife, no family, and no one to care for him. People said he was strange and quiet, but also hardworking. Emily's family saw him as an opportunity. "He will take her," her father said coldly. "At least we'll get something in return." Emily stood in the corner, holding her thin shawl, listening as her life was being traded away like a broken tool. No one asked how she felt. No one cared. A few days later, a tall man arrived on horseback. His name was Jack. His beard was thick from the cold, and his clothes were worn, but his eyes were gentle. He spoke very little, but when he did, his voice was calm. "I came for the girl," he said. Emily stepped forward, shaking. Her mother didn't even hug her goodbye. They took the money and turned away, as if she had never been part of their family. The journey to the mountains was long and quiet. Snow fell softly as Jack led the horse along narrow paths. Emily sat behind him, afraid but also curious. Jack never once raised his voice or acted harshly. When he noticed her shivering, he handed her his thick coat without a word. By the time they reached his land, the sun was setting. A small wooden cabin stood between tall pine trees. Smoke rose from its chimney, and a soft orange light glowed from inside. "This is home," Jack said. Emily stepped inside and was surprised. The cabin was simple but warm. There was a fire, a wooden table, and a clean bed. It was more kindness than she had ever known. "You can rest," Jack told her. "You are safe here." That night, Emily lay on the bed, staring at the wooden ceiling. For the first time in her life, no one was yelling at her. No one was calling her useless. She didn't know what the future would bring, but something in her heart whispered that her story was about to change. High in the quiet mountains, far from the cruelty of her past, Emily had been given a new beginning. Emily woke up to the soft crackling of firewood. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered the mountains, the cabin, and the quiet man who had brought her here. She sat up slowly, afraid of what the day might bring. In her old home, mornings always started with shouting and hard work. But here, there was only silence and the warm smell of coffee. Jack was outside, chopping wood. When he saw Emily step out, he stopped and gave a small, shy nod. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, thank you." Jack looked relieved. He handed her a cup of warm tea. "You don't have to be afraid here." Those words touched her heart deeply. Over the next few days, Emily began to notice how different Jack was from the people she had known. He never ordered her around. He never insulted her. Instead, he asked if she was hungry, if she was tired, if she needed anything. It felt strange to be treated with such care. Jack worked hard every day. He repaired the roof, fixed the fence, and even started building a small extra room next to the cabin. "What is that for?" Emily asked one afternoon. "For you," Jack replied. "A place that's yours." No one had ever built something just for her before. Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled. As the weeks passed, Emily slowly began to heal. She helped in the garden, cooked meals, and sometimes sat with Jack by the fire in the evenings. They talked about small things, the weather, the mountains, and the past. Jack shared that he had grown up alone and had never felt like he belonged anywhere. "I know what it feels like," Emily said softly. One evening, as snow fell outside, Jack brought her a warm blanket and gently placed it around her shoulders. "You deserve kindness," he said. "No one is useless." Emily's heart trembled. Those words were something she had waited her whole life to hear. Slowly, a quiet bond grew between them. It wasn't loud or fast. It was gentle and strong, like the mountains around them. Emily felt safe for the first time. She wasn't being used. She wasn't being sold. She was being respected. One night, Jack stood by the fire and looked nervous. "Emily," he said, "I don't want you to feel trapped here. But if you wish, I would like you to stay. Not as something bought, but as someone chosen." Emily looked at him. In his eyes, she saw honesty, not control. She took a deep breath. "I would like that," she said. In the quiet cabin, under the soft glow of firelight, two lonely souls found something they had both been missing: a place to belong. Life in the mountains slowly became brighter for Emily. Each morning, sunlight came through the small cabin window, and birds sang in the trees. It was very different from the dark, painful home she had left behind. Even though she was safe now, part of her heart still carried fear. Years of being told she was worthless did not disappear easily. Jack noticed this. He never pushed her. Instead, he showed his care through small, kind actions. He would leave flowers on the table, bring fresh bread, or sit with her when she looked sad. He wanted her to know she was not alone anymore. One day, Emily tried to help Jack repair the fence. She was nervous, afraid she would make a mistake. "I'm not very good at things," she whispered. Jack stopped working and looked at her gently. "You are good just for being you." Those words felt strange to her, but also comforting. As the weeks passed, Emily began to feel stronger. She planted vegetables, cooked meals, and even learned how to care for the small animals Jack kept. Every time she succeeded, her confidence grew a little more. Jack praised her, not to control her, but to encourage her. One afternoon, a group of townspeople passed near the mountain trail. Emily became frightened when she heard their voices. Her past felt too close. Jack noticed her shaking. "It's okay," he said. "No one can hurt you here." He stood between her and the trail until the people left. Emily realized that Jack wasn't just kind, he was protecting her. That night, Emily shared her pain for the first time. She told Jack how her family had treated her, how they had made her feel small and unwanted. "I thought I was nothing," she said quietly. Jack listened without interrupting. When she finished, he spoke softly. "You were never nothing. They just didn't know your value." Emily cried, but this time they were not tears of fear, they were tears of healing. Slowly, their bond became deeper. They laughed more. They talked more. The cabin felt less lonely. Emily even started to dream again. Dreams of peace, of a future that wasn't filled with pain. One evening, as the sky turned orange and purple, Jack took Emily outside. He pointed toward the land. "This place was empty before you came," he said. "Now it feels like a home." Emily looked around. The mountains were still cold and wild, but inside her heart, something warm had begun to grow. For the first time in her life, she believed she truly belonged somewhere. Winter slowly faded into spring, and the mountains began to change. Snow melted, flowers appeared, and warm sunlight filled the valley. Just like the land, Emily was changing too. The fear in her eyes was slowly being replaced by hope. One morning, Jack surprised her with a small wooden ring he had carved by hand. "It's not much," he said nervously, "but I made it for you." Emily held it gently, touched by the care behind it. No one had ever made something just for her before. "I want to build a future with you," Jack continued. "Not because anyone forced us, but because we choose each other." Emily's heart felt full. She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "I choose you too." They didn't have a big wedding. There were no guests, no fancy clothes. Just the quiet mountains, the warm cabin, and two people promising to care for each other. It was simple, but it was real. After that day, life became peaceful. They worked together, shared meals, and laughed. Emily no longer felt like she was surviving, she was living. Jack never treated her as something he owned. He treated her as a partner. One afternoon, Emily stood outside looking at the cabin Jack had built for her. She remembered the girl who had been sold, who had felt useless and broken. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who was loved and respected. Jack walked over and gently took her hand. "You okay?" he asked. Emily smiled. "I've never been better." As the sun set behind the mountains, they stood together, watching the sky change colors. Their pasts had been lonely and painful, but their future was bright. Far away from the cruelty of the world, in a small cabin on a mountain, Emily finally had what she had always dreamed of, a home, a family, and a life filled with dignity and love. If you want, I can now create image prompts, a title, YouTube description, hashtags, and search tags for this full story movie Camera Sparkles.